TV.
Good evening, I'm political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged, an explosive testimony out of Washington this week. The former FBI director calls the president a liar. But what does all this drama mean politically? Well, joining us now with some insight is attorney James Goodnow with Fenimore Craig. I want to thank you very much for joining us, and welcome back to the show.
Great to be here.
All right, well, let's start off with the basics here. What was your big takeaway from this highly anticipated dramatic event?
My big takeaway is this was a bad day for the White House, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Yeah.
I think there was a belief on the part of Democrats and progressives that this would be the knockout punch, really the beginning of the end of the Trump administration. Not true. Donald Trump showed us that he is the master at changing the subject. He managed to turn the tables on Jim Comey, now focusing on him as the leaker. So I think now, for those who had hopes that somehow things will change, not true.
I think, from my take, I looked at this and I would see that depending on where you are at politically, that there was enough ammunition on both sides to take away and say, kind of declare victory or say, this is bad or this is good for whatever party that you're looking at. But I also got a sense, too, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this, is this is going to be dragging on for a long time, this Russia investigation.
Well, absolutely. Don't expect it to end anytime soon. We know that Bob Mueller, special counsel, is just getting started. He's still assembling his team. So this is something that's not going to take months, but likely years, as that works its way through the process. Now, this particular chapter of the obstruction debate, I think, isn't over yet. This may be the first page of that first chapter. That, too, will continue. So expect a lot of discussion in the coming months.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about that. You're an attorney. Do you think that Mr. Comey presented himself as a very solid witness in this case? Obviously, the White House administration in the past has reportedly called him a nut job and tried to discredit him, as you were saying, as calling him a leaker. But after this hearing yesterday, do you think he's pretty credible? Do you think he established that yesterday?
I do. I think Jim Comey came across as a very credible witness. And what we look to when we're gauging the credibility of someone is, do they make comments that hurt themselves? Well, certainly, to a degree. We know Jim Comey said he was cowardly. He said he wasn't strong enough. He also wasn't willing to go as far as some of the Democratic senators wanted him to. So all of that certainly cut in his favor. And, of course, we do know that he confirmed that Donald Trump, in fact, was not under investigation, something that Donald Trump had said time and time again. He didn't need to go there. He did. So when you weigh all of that, it does suggest that there's truth to that. And let's not forget, of course, the memos.
But that's also pretty nuanced to say that, to confirm that he said he wasn't under investigation. The reason why Comey never wanted to go there was because he was saying that that investigation could lead to them looking at the president, and that if he was going to tell him and go public that he wasn't under investigation, then maybe sometime in the future he would have to come out and say that he is now under investigation, which would make it even worse.
Agreed. I think in many ways this was a red herring. So the fact that Donald Trump wasn't under investigation doesn't mean anything about whether he will be under investigation in the future. And as a matter of fact, we do know he is under investigation right now for obstruction of justice with Bob Mueller.
You definitely need a flow chart to keep up with all these events here with all of this. But one of the key questions here in all of this is whether or not Donald Trump actually ordered, directed, otherwise, Mr. Comey to drop the FBI investigation. I want to play you a little bit of sound here that I think we have on Mr. Comey's answer to that question.
I took it as a direction. Right. I mean, this is the President of the United States, with me alone, saying, I hope this. I took it as, this is what he wants me to do. Now, I didn't obey that, but that's the way I took it.
Well, later we find out that, he says, look, I felt that it was, I was being directed this way, but a lot of Republicans defending Mr. Trump saying, look, he never directed you to do anything, right?
Well, again, I think this, from a legal perspective, is a distraction. What Jim Comey thought or felt doesn't matter. Let's start there. Okay. But also what doesn't matter is whether or not Donald Trump directed or ordered. That is not a requirement under the United States Code. That is not an element of obstruction of justice. What matters is what was going on in Donald Trump's head at the time. So in many ways, it's a nice talking point. I think it resonates with people in a very human way, but legally has no significance.
Yeah, because obviously a lot of people are pointing to intent. Now, he asked everybody to leave the room, according to James Comey. Also, though, too, I want to ask you, as a lawyer, he's the President of the United States. if he says, well, I really wish this would go away, or I hope this would go away, isn't that kind of enough, or does he need to say, I'm directing you to end this investigation?
No, absolutely. There are no magic words that need to be said. This issue has actually come up in the Fifth Circuit and the Eighth Circuit. There are published opinions on this that say, in fact, the phrase, I hope, is enough. Now, I would point out, we're not just talking about what happened on that February 14th meeting. You have to look at the entire body here, starting with the loyalty pledge and ending with the termination of Jim Comey. And we know that Donald Trump himself told Lester Holt that in his mind was Russia. That's a problem for him from an obstruction perspective. So you put all of this together, and it paints a very damaging picture for Donald Trump.
So it was pretty interesting to me. One of the other big takeaways from all of this was that Jim Comey really talking about this kind of media strategy he had behind the back, that you talked about, that yes, he was the leaker in all this, and that he actually talked to a friend of his at Columbia University, the law school there, to leak some of these memos out to the media. Now, following all this, Trump's personal attorney came out and kind of addressed that situation. I want to play that sound for you right now.
It is overwhelmingly clear that there have been and continue to be those in government who are actively attempting to undermine this administration with selective and illegal leaks of classified information and privileged communications. Mr. Comey has now admitted that he is one of these leakers.
All right, let's talk a little bit about that, because he went on to say that maybe that authorities should be looking at Mr. Comey. Has he exposed himself, Mr. Comey, that is, to anything legally here by leaking out this information?
Possibly, but probably not. There is a case, and it goes something like this. Jim Comey left the White House, and he went into an FBI vehicle, and he went onto an FBI laptop, and he wrote out these memos. Now, the argument we're hearing is that, well, that makes them property of the United States government, and of course, because these pertain to sensitive subjects, they were automatically confidential. I think a majority of the legal scholars who have examined this disagree with that. This does not seem to be classified. Now, does that mean that Jim Comey was right in the way he handled this? That's not a legal question, but perhaps not. And I think his efforts, frankly, to get a special counsel involved by leaking this ultimately to the New York Times is unsavory and probably inappropriate. And maybe it even borders on illegal if there's a case there. But let's not forget this. Even if Jim Comey made missteps, even if he violated the law, that does not exonerate Donald Trump. Those are separate questions. Two wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah, definitely a lot of PR playing going on here, a lot of legal gamesmanship here as well. But also want to talk a lot about the unexpected star, really, of this hearing here, Senator John McCain. Now, a lot of people were really buzzing about this afterwards because it seemed at many times that he was confused. People really didn't understand his line of questioning. And I want to play a little bit of a sound from Mr. McCain's appearance on that committee right now.
You reached the conclusion that there was no reason to bring charges against Secretary Clinton. So you reached a conclusion. In the case of Mr. Comey, the President Comey, case of President Trump, you have an ongoing investigation. So you got one candidate who you're done with and another candidate that you have a long way to go. Is that correct?
Obviously, Mr. McCain appeared to be blurring the line, melding the two investigations, Hillary Clinton's emails with the Russian investigation. At one point, Mr. Comey himself said, he looked at him and said, excuse me, I'm confused, Senator. Should constituents be worried about this?
Look, this was a head-scratcher. It was a befuddling moment, and it was a humorous one on social media. I think there's a risk of reading too much into this. We had 5 minutes with John McCain asking questions. Whether or not he stayed up too late the night before watching the D-backs, or whether or not he just went too far down a line of questions, I think he has a long career here, and so we shouldn't judge him by this, but certainly not the Mavericks' finest moment.
Yeah, and what did you think about that, him coming out with that statement saying, I stayed up too late watching the D-backs?
Yeah, that was an odd statement. Even if that was true, I don't think that would explain what we saw there. But let's see what happens. If this becomes a pattern, I think we all have reason to be concerned, and John McCain has reason to be concerned. But so far, it seems to be an isolated incident.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for coming back here on the show. We're going to have to take a quick break right now, but we do have lots more to come here on Politics Unplugged.
This is an emergency. It's a public health emergency, and we're going to treat it as such.
Doug Ducey says it is time to respond to an opioid emergency. Just ahead, a closer look at the shocking number of overdose deaths and how the state is hoping to turn the tide. And there is no question former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords is a fighter. Now a ship named after her is ready for combat. Coming up, why this is such a big honor on Politics Unplugged.
3TV and CBS 5, the power of two, keeping your family safe in Arizona's monsoon. From new technology tracking lightning to why specific neighborhoods get more rain. And what to do if you're on the water when the weather turns. 3TV's Royal Norman, April Warnicki, Kim Quintero, CBS 5's Paul Horton, Ian Schwartz, Ashley DiMartino. Watch Monsoon 2017, Thursday at 8 on 3TV.
Tell her you'd marry her all over again. The Jewelry Exchange has stackable anniversary bands $99, half carat $249, princess $590, 1 carat marquise $790, and 2 carat platinum $39.90. Thousands of bands guaranteed to appraise for double. The Jewelry Exchange, Phoenix.
You won't believe all the special purchases we've made. Our big factories are giving huge discounts on special purchases, and we're passing the savings on to you. That means you'll get great bargains. Look at this daybed with trundle for only $221, or this black metal futon for $78, and this queen-size antique gray storage bed for only $378. These are one-time purchases at huge discounts, and we're passing the savings on to you. Get a free stuffed animal with any qualifying purchase.
To go in and have a child that's 6 years old and to come home and not only recognize that she's grown up, but then also to see that, oh, wow, I got a granddaughter that's 5 years old. Those are the things you can never get back.
How do you make up for years of lost freedom when the courts get it wrong, and where Arizona stands in the fight to find justice?
I don't know how you put a price tag on it.
Thursday at 9:43, only on 3TV.
Hey, job's all done. Kind of expensive, but I got an out-of-sight warranty.
Nice. What is the warranty?
When I'm out of sight, the warranty's void.
At Parker & Sons, all work comes with a warranty at no charge. We do things right the first time. That's how we won the BBB Torch Award for ethics. Call Parker today for all your plumbing, heating, cooling, and drain cleaning needs.
And I promise there'll be no meltings on your job.
Call 602-2-REPAIR to get it done.
Celebrate dads and grads. The Jewelry Exchange has titanium bands for $29, pearl sets $29, half-carat diamond studs $299, and men's diamond bands $399. Thousands of gift ideas factory direct. The Jewelry Exchange, Phoenix.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. Tonight's hot topic, opioid addiction, and an alarming jump in overdose deaths. And joining us now is Dr. Cara Christ, Director of the Arizona Department of Health Services, to talk about what Governor Doug Ducey calls an emergency. And really, before we get down and start breaking all the numbers down and looking into this issue, we heard before the break the governor describing that emergency. I want to play a little bit more from him and what he had to say recently.
And we're going to bring together a coalition of the Department of Health Services, the Department of Emergency and Military Affairs, and we're going to have a better program going forward so that we can address this emergency.
Now, that's quite a broad coalition of people working together, Department of Military Affairs and all this stuff. I mean, what are they going to be doing? How is this going to work?
So the Department of Emergency and Military Affairs is responsible for coordinating statewide efforts in the event of an emergency. So they coordinate that for us. Public health, because this has been named a public health emergency, is in charge of coordinating the public health emergency portion of it. So bringing together the public health sector.
So what does that mean, like in layman's terms? I mean, in very colloquial terms. I mean, what is DEMA going to be doing?
So what they're doing is they're helping us coordinate the statewide activities. So they're bringing all of the agency directors together. They're coordinating with the governor's office to issue the emergency declaration, to work on the enhanced surveillance advisory that he will be issuing, and then coordinating with us to make sure if we need additional resources, they help us secure that and provide that.
Now, we've seen a lot of reporting on this, and we've heard a lot about this. So 790 deaths due to opioid overdoses last year. We've seen huge amounts of opioids that were being prescribed to people. How did it get to this point? Who's to blame here?
I think that there's a lot of factors that contributed this going back decades. So, you know, we were under the assumption that prescribing opioids was safe, they were non-addictive, you could use them for chronic pain, and that has not turned out to be the case. And as we tend to clamp down on the prescription drugs that people need in order to treat their chronic pain and illness, we tend to move them then into illicit methods, so heroin and drugs off of the street.
Okay, and so the governor issued a proclamation out there, and basically what you guys are doing right now is going out and gathering information, a lot of information on this. What are you finding?
So right now, what we have found over the last several months working with Governor Ducey and his team is that we do not have good data. We have death certificate data and hospital discharge data, which lags 6 to 18 months behind. So we're just coming out with 2016 data. So we're making recommendations to him in order to get better real-time data so that we can implement interventions in our most widely impacted communities.
And where are the most widely impacted communities at? I mean, where are we seeing this? Is it rural areas? Is it the cities?
Well, sheer numbers, it's the metropolitan areas, so it's Phoenix and Tucson. But what we're seeing is that our rural areas are having difficulty dealing with the overdoses. They have less resources, they have farther distances to go to get care, less healthcare providers that can do the medication-assisted treatment. So it's really a statewide problem, and we have to address each as their own individual community.
Okay, and now you're also you're expected to be delivering the governor some information here. That it was a week after this proclamation, you were going to go into his office and recommending different types of strategies. What are you going to be talking to him about?
Absolutely. So by Monday, we have to deliver the recommendations and a consultation on the enhanced surveillance activities. So this is going to be the recommendations for us to get that real-time data. So we're going to ask for suspected drug overdoses, suspected opioid drug deaths, and babies born with neonatal abstinence syndrome to be reported to the department within 24 hours. We're also going to ask law enforcement and first responders to report any naloxone doses and how many, where they were administered in the community within 24 hours as well.
Okay, and to maybe tell our viewers a little bit too, what's happening now, how are things different now in the medical world today than they were, say, a week ago before this proclamation, before this emergency was declared?
So right now what we've been doing is we have been coordinating with our stakeholders and our providers to get them messaging out to make them aware that this is an opioid epidemic. We've given them recommendations and guidelines to which we will be continuing to educate them on. And then we've pulled together that system. So we're going to be developing in partnership with stakeholders recommendations for the governor to take that is due September 5th so that we can either make legislative proposals, policy proposals that then he can take and decide what he wants to act on.
Well, legislative proposals, that's pretty interesting. I know that legislatively they created a committee to study this issue. What kinds of legislative ideas moving forward could happen next year for the government?
So there could be different things that we recommend based on a look at what other states are doing. So there could be regulations for healthcare institutions that we may need to address, or we may need to close gap in law enforcement. You know, to make selling, we hear anecdotally that people are being sold heroin while they're waiting in line for a methadone clinic. You know, maybe increasing what the severity of those crimes are to prevent that from happening, those types of things.
Oh, really? So you could be seeing increased penalties, more regulation, and those types of things. Could you be seeing anything with more going after doctors who are maybe over-prescribing these types of prescriptions? You know, right now, with our increase in heroin deaths, we really need more data before we can determine what the cause is. We do know that there is a lot of prescribing of opioids, but our deaths don't rise as dramatically as they do in the heroin. So we just really need to get a better picture on what's going on in our communities. Sure. And we've seen, too, recently a couple of states, particularly Ohio, had filed suit against pharmaceutical companies for their role in this increase in opioid addiction, opioid deaths. Is this something that you would want to pursue down the road as well, or do you think it's a good idea?
So we've activated our Health Emergency Operations Center, and what they're doing is they're doing a 50-state scan on all of the activities. That's one of the components that we're going to be looking at, which states have pursued that and why, so that maybe we can work with our Attorney General's office to see if those same issues apply here in Arizona.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks for stopping by the show again, but we're going to have to take another quick break. But we have lots more to talk about here on Politics Unplugged. Former presidential candidate Mitt Romney gives Jeff Flake a plug, and despite the drama in Washington, President Donald Trump has his eyes on infrastructure.
The world, in many cases, is so far advanced that they look at our infrastructure as being sad.
A closer look at how the president wants to get the country building just ahead.
Being hit while riding a motorcycle can be devastating. You'll have major injuries and major hospital bills. Hurt while riding a motorcycle? You know who to call. I'm attorney Kevin Rowe, and we'll fight hard to get you every dollar you deserve.
977-1900. I'm a time management expert. I plan on every minute of every day. But that all changed when I was rear-ended.
Nobody plans to be in an accident, but unfortunately they happen. If you're suffering in pain, call Emergency Chiropractic. They will treat you with no deductibles, no co-pays, and no out-of-pocket costs.
Emergency Chiropractic helped get my life back on schedule.
Emergency Chiropractic, the kind of care you want today.
Buckle up.
In Arizona's heat, water is a basic need.
So is protection like sunscreen and hats.
But not everyone can afford these necessities.
All month long, join 3TV and make a donation in any Albertsons or Safeway store.
From the most vulnerable to seniors and even our first responders.
Your help can bring cool relief to those who need it most.
Help us hydrate Arizona from the Salvation Army, AmTrust Bank, a division of New York Community Bank, and 3TV, Arizona's family.
Native. You've never seen a menu this good, with burgers, pizza, and over 19 different wing flavors. You name it, they've got it. Or they don't. If beer is your game, game on, son. And let's just say their sauces are scrumptious and irresistible. So how about you come to a place where you can always catch the big game? Native Grill and Wings. It's not just great wings, it's a great experience.
Hi, Hyundai, can you please hold? Hello? No, it's not a typo. Up to $6,750 total savings. That's why it's called the Better Than Ever sales event. Hold, please. Hi, I'm sorry, but there's nobody here right now. It's 2 a.m., and I don't even think I'm supposed to be answering them.
Hey, are those numbers real?
I gotta go.
Visit the Better Than Ever sales event for the biggest savings in Hyundai's 30-year history. Save like never before on the Sonata with 25% off MSRP. That's $6,750 in total savings. Only at your Valley Hyundai dealer.
Thank you for calling Lerner & Rowe Injury Attorneys.
Thank you for calling Lerner & Rowe Injury Attorneys.
Thank you for calling Lerner & Rowe Injury Attorneys.
Hurt in a wreck and need to speak to an attorney? We're available 24/7. Get the help when you need it right now. I'm attorney Kevin Rowe.
977-1900.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. It's time to talk it out with our partners from First Strategic. And with us today is Steve Roman and Barry Dill. Thank you, gentlemen, for stopping by the show yet again. And want to start off by talking about former presidential candidate Mitt Romney. He was in Arizona to campaign for Jeff Flake. Now, obviously Jeff Flake could be in for a very tough election year next year. Is this something that can really help Mr. Flake, this pairing of Mr. Romney?
Well, it can certainly help him raise money.
Well,
and that's what the whole idea is right now. It's such a long way away before the election, and so the ability to raise money is definitely in Senator Flake's favor, and he's starting early, as he should, because it's liable to be a tough primary next year.
Yeah, but he is facing an electorate right now that is really good, kind of anti-establishment right now, and when you start looking at this stuff, I mean, there's no more establishment figure than someone like Mitt Romney.
Well, that's true, but I totally agree with Barry. It's way early and money counts. Yeah. Right now, he only has one individual that's in against him in the primary. Frankly, I think he'd hope there'd be more. That would probably help him as opposed to having one single person. And so we will we'll have a long time to see who's entering and what happens.
All right, now also sticking with statewide politics here, we got another entrant into the gubernatorial race as State Senator Steve Farley, a Democrat, is throwing his hat in the ring there. I want you to kind of break down the pluses and minuses for that, because it's my understanding is that he wants to keep his office while he seeks to campaign for the office of governor.
Yeah, sure. So Mr. Garcia has a plus in that he's an educator. He's a long history inside of the Arizona education arena. However, that wasn't even enough to propel him 3 years ago to defeat our current superintendent of public instruction, who most people think is pretty lousy, and he couldn't overcome that when she didn't even campaign. So that's kind of the strike, against him. I tend to wonder about it's also in Arizona's history someone staying in office, running for a higher office while they're still in office hasn't been successful. I don't know if Senator Farley can break that mold or not. One of his strengths that he has going for him is the fact that he has been in office, and he does not have a very controversial but a pretty stellar history of legislation. So those are kind of the pluses and minuses.
All right. And now, I want to move on a little bit to the national stage here. Now, Donald Trump, with all the Comey stuff going on, was trying to get through some infrastructure projects. He wanted to get some of those policies moving forward. He brought governors, mayors from across the country there. Governor Doug Ducey was part of that, met with Mr. Vice President Pence, met with President Trump. What's Ducey asking from these guys?
Well, I think, first of all, I think Governor Ducey's in a very good position. The fact that he has a close relationship with the Vice President, the fact that they're talking this whole infrastructure, which means money going out, and more than likely some of that coming to Arizona, can only be beneficial to Arizona, which means it would be beneficial for the governor. I would say he's in a very good position, and I salute him for doing everything that he can to help our state. And I think the whole infrastructure issue is completely necessary and something that needs to be done on a completely federal level.
Okay, and I want to kind of stick with Washington here. Obviously, we talked a little bit before about Senator John McCain, and he became really an unexpected star for the wrong reasons there. But his excuse for his confusing line of testimony was that, well, hey, I stayed up late the night before watching the Diamondbacks game. Well, what is he doing that for? Look, this was a big deal. This is one of the most anticipated committee hearings probably since Watergate, certainly since Iran-Contra. Is he taking his responsibilities seriously if the night before all this he's staying up late?
Dennis, I totally believe he's taking his responsibilities serious. I think we've all had bad days. I'm having a bad day, right now. So I could go into a Senator McCain moment just at, any minute. I hope that and to the point of your previous guest, I don't think there's a pattern here of this. This is sort of a new side of Senator McCain not being focused that we've seen, that we haven't seen in the past, and so I just chalk it up as a bad day at the office.
All right, now I want to wrap up here. We're running out of time here, Steve, but I do want to wrap up here and talk about this big honor for former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. This week, a new ship entered service. That ship named after Giffords. The Navy says it chose the name Giffords to become synonymous with courage. Now, this really is a big honor because she joins as one of only 3 living people, Americans, with a ship named after her. The other 2 are presidents, former President George H.W. Bush and Jimmy Carter. Now, what does this mean for Arizona?
Well, let's take it one step further. It's not just the living people that are living presidents, but you take a look at other ships. There's a Gerald Ford. And there's also a Ronald Reagan.
Sure.
So she's in the company of presidents, and deservedly so. We are very proud of her from our state. It's a completely deserved honor given who she is and what she stands for, and I think we as Arizonans, no matter who you are, should be very proud.
About 15 seconds left. This is a big deal for her. And well-deserved, huh?
It is very well-deserved. The trauma, everything she's gone through, she is a true profile in courage, in my view, as high as any of the presidents that have ever served. So congratulations to her.
All right, well, that is all the time we have tonight, but be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged.